I remember back in the old days, it was, how do we get this thing highly performant on the Oracle database and to get that to highly scale up? We're doing the same thing on OpenStack. We're increasing we're doing performance tests, throughput rates. It's not good enough that you can just deploy a cloud, but it has to scale. Without that scale, both in network space, IOPS, and compute, it's useless. And then also, there's a lot of stabilization. It takes us a huge amount of time to run it through our enterprise certification test suite, our test regiment, because this is all like the boring stuff. It's like the first part, it's like the 80-20 rule. It's like, all the fun is in the first part, the innovation, but the real value, that's what Red Hat drove into RHEL, and that's what we're bringing into cloud down in the stabilization. And then also in the delivery phase, it's to have a product that's supported, integrated with Red Hat's other offerings as well. So with that, it's all about our upstream focus. That's how we innovate in our products and technologies. But with cloud isn't just one thing. It's not a kernel. It's not a network device driver. Cloud really permeates in many different levels. It permeates from the virtualization layer through the KVM hypervisor layer into the RHEL operating system, and up above that into the OpenStack and things like OVS networking and Open Daylight. So to be a real cloud innovator and player, you have to be participating in all these different areas. Just to show how much Red Hat cares and values about our commitment to cloud, Red Hat for the past 3 releases has been the largest #1 contributor to the OpenStack community. We have a large number of project technical leaders. So Red Hat doesn't just talk the talk, we walk the walk. And same as how we did RHEL through Fedora, in all of our cloud isn't just one thing. It's a combination of things like how we do platform as a service, how we do Gluster for storage, how we do Overt for virtualization. And soon we're going to be talking about how we're open sourcing our CloudForms system management platform suite. So it's all about bringing projects into product. That's what cloud is all about for Red Hat. And the way that Red Hat is delivering cloud is we have what we call Red Hat Enterprise Linux OpenStack Platform, or RHEL-OSP for short. So we don't sell OpenStack as a layered product. The reason why is because OpenStack is intimately tied to the operating system platform. And I'll get into that in the next page. They're really paired. You can't have one without the other. And so we deliver our combination of RHEL and OpenStack together. And we have we have a long support cycle. We support it for 18 months to 2 years, depending on version. And we have a large partner ecosystem, because that was the thing with RHEL. It was really to have a platform that runs across different hardware vendors. That was the beauty of RHEL. So with an OpenStack, we're dealing with not only those same hardware vendors, but also things like storage and network providers as well, to have that broader ecosystem. And that way you can know that you're not locked in to any one vendor. And these are just some examples of how OpenStack is really tight with RHEL. For example, we have enablers in RHEL in virtualization, security, network, storage, down through the ecosystem. I'm going fast because the timer is about to gong me here. But the point is that RHEL and OpenStack it's the new evolution of RHEL. It's the combination of them together that's the real focus of Red Hat. And so with that, so my last point in closing, because we'll get into more details in the next slides. So just to describe the templates and the formats that each of the next speakers are going to talk about. They're going to talk about what they've done recently in the recent releases, like what's new for their technologies. They're going to give some hints on the futures, what's coming up next. But then also the key important point that I impressed on all of them is how do these products integrate? It's not just in isolation, but how do we get a cloud solution stack together? So you'll see that from them. And then they'll also give you some pointers or references to sessions at this summit. So with that, I'm gonged, and we move it off to Brian Kearney, who's going to talk about satellite.
This on? Can you guys hear me in the back? All right, thank you. So I was thrilled to watch Paul's keynote earlier because he said the app is king when he talked about the cloud, which is great because you come up here as a satellite guy and you're in a cloud roadmap, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And the reality is that satellite, as an application lifecycle management tool, is exactly what you need when you're moving from bare metal to virtualization and into the cloud, whether it's public or private. So we think we fit in great in a topic like this. So let's go real quickly back into histories. In October of this year, 2013 actually, we released Satellite 5.6. This was a huge release for us. There were a lot of great things up there. I'm not going to read this word slide to you. I'm going to call out two very important things that we're very proud of in the Satellite 5.6 release. One is that we moved from a proprietary embedded database to Postgres. And we had tooling that could move people seamlessly when they upgraded, sucking all their data out of one database and putting it to another. So if you're interested in moving to a pure open source solution within your data center, Satellite 5.6 is the first release that gives that to you. The second major thing that we had in 5.6 that we're very proud of is the enhanced subscription reporting feature, which is a top slide there. If you've been involved with Red Hat for a long time, there's been a lot of interest and concerns about how do we provide really good granularity for subscription reporting. Satellite 6, or RHEL 6 introduced a lot of new tooling for that, and in 5.6 it was the first time that we actually embedded this new subscription management tooling as a feature of our premier system management tool. If you're interested in learning more about the enhanced subscription reporting, Chris Dury and Rich Gerito are giving a presentation on this tomorrow. I believe it's at 4:50, and you can go and learn more about that. The other thing we've been doing during the last year is we've been rolling out Satellite 6.0, our next generation system management tool. We've been doing that through a series of, you can call them early beta releases. We called them Managed Design Programs, or MDPs. And we had between 100 to 150 customers download Satellite 6, use it, and provide us feedback. Now, Satellite 6 is a complete reimagining and a re-envisionment compared to what's there with Satellite 5, so it's brand new to a lot of our satellite customers. It was a little bit daunting, and that's why we've done this extended beta program for what it's worth. The good news is, and what our customers are seeing, is that Satellite 6 is based on not only our customers' experience with Satellite 5, but also some of the leading open source projects around provisioning, configuration management, and content management that have been deployed within the Red Hat data center and in many of your data centers as well for a long period of time. So people are using these technologies today, they're using these tools today, and Satellite 6 will bring that to them, and we'll put a nice bow around it, as you'll see in some of our slides later on, and deliver that to our customers. If you're interested in learning more about Satellite 6, I'd recommend David Kaplan at 2:30 today, and Eric Jacobs are giving an in-depth overview and demonstration of Satellite 6 if you'd like to learn a little bit more about that. Looking forward to this year coming up, a lot of our emphasis is going to be on transitioning our customers from Satellite 5 to Satellite 6. And the reason that we're going to be focusing on that, if you look at this slide today, is just the set of features that will be available to our customers with the advent of Satellite 6. It'll be betaing later this summer. It'll be GAing later this year. It's a mind-boggling difference of features that will be available to our customers. They'll be able to define custom products, combining RPMs and Puppet modules, promote them through custom lifecycle environments that they define, provision their machines onto bare metal or into virtualization fabrics, RevM, OpenStack, etc., and then to manage them on an ongoing basis and do drift detection. Features that our satellite customers have been asking for long periods of time. All of that will be wrapped around robust RBAC tooling, internationalization, easy to extend UI, etc. Features that if you are satellite customers, you've been asking for a long time. Satellite 6 is where you're going to be seeing a lot of those. So again, betaing later this summer. All satellite customers will be getting access to the beta bits. If you're interested in a high-touch beta, I don't know if David Kaplan's in the room, but find him at the booth. We're down in booth 13, and he'll be interested in getting folks into a high-touch beta as well. This is what our roadmap looks like. And I'm not going to go over all the dates because we don't need to read that. But the message I want to give to all the folks that are satellite customers are the future of Red Hat Satellite is Satellite 6. That's where we're putting our engineering efforts. That's where we're putting our training efforts, etc. If you are a Satellite 5 customer, There's no rush to move. We're not going to cut you off tomorrow. If you see from the roadmap slide, there are years ahead where we're going to be doing additional releases, additional security fixes, so that you can transition your environment when it makes sense to you. We're excited by what Satellite 6 brings, but we realize that you may not want to move tomorrow. You may not want to move March 31st by noon, right? So we have a long life cycle for there, but recognize that a lot of the effort and our engineering efforts are going to be on Satellite 6. Thomas Cameron and Todd Warner are going to be going over a transition topic tomorrow at today at 3:30. So if you're interested in moving from Satellite 5 to Satellite 6, check out their talk later on today. From an integration point of view, this is what we have coming up over the next 6 to 9 months. Both Satellite 5 and 6 are going to be integrating with IPA. So if you're managing your infrastructure with Satellite, you can also manage your infrastructure with IPA, and it'll be a seamless environment. Satellite 6, when it comes out, you'll be able to provision your system profiles onto bare metal, onto RevM, onto OpenStack, etc. And coming soon, because I wanted to give segue to Daniel, the ability to build and manage Docker containers and deploy them out of Satellite 6. You'll see that becoming in tech previews and stuff later on. I think I've mentioned all these before. The only thing I think that I missed is tomorrow at 10:40, if you are a Satellite 5 customer and you want to learn how people are using Satellite 5 today, we have some of our customers from public sector, from finance, et cetera, from North America, from international, that will come up to share their experiences with Satellite 6 or Satellite 5. So please come and see that. I think I'm done. Oh, right on time. And here's Andy. There you go. Oh,
thank you. Okay, so since I cannot talk for 7 minutes, let me hit the last slide, which is the Rev sessions following today's talk. So we have a lab at 1:20. It's a 2-hour hands-on lab. You can come and go during 2 hours to deploy on Rev. 3:40 tomorrow, we have a deep dive and a roadmap session. So 3:40 for an hour, and then a roadmap following that. So before I talk about Rev, let me talk about Red Hat Cloud Infrastructure, RHCI. So RHCI has 3 main components. It has Rev and RHEL OpenStack platform to provide the infrastructure layer. So whether you're deploying traditional data center applications or more modern elastic applications on a private cloud, we have your infrastructure covered. The level above that, we have CloudForms that provides a common set of services on top of not just our own infrastructure, but on top of VMware, Hyper-V, Amazon EC2, and other public cloud vendors. But if we go a level below that, so if you look at the Rev and OpenStack layers, rather than developing a cloud silo for OpenStack and a data center silo for Rev, we've adopted a shared services model. The idea is not just to deploy Rev standalone and OpenStack standalone. You can deploy a common set of services based on the modular building blocks in OpenStack. So services like Glance for images, Keystone for authentication, and use those both with Rev and with OpenStack platform. So what is Rev? The easiest way to describe Rev is it's an open source competitor to vSphere. So it's data center virtualization with a full point-and-click graphical UI. Now, where Red Hat's, of course, is a command line and an API. And it's got all the features you'd expect from data center virtualization. High availability, live migration, storage live migration, dynamic load balancing of your VMs, tools to migrate from physical machines or other virtualization platforms into Rev. So point a tool at your ESX installation or your vSphere installation. We pull out the image and the metadata and convert that to run on Rev. A self-service portal, reporting engine, a set of plugins from third parties to extend the UI. So if you're using NetApp storage, for example, you get extra functionality in the storage provisioning and snapshotting areas. As I mentioned, the OpenStack service integration, which we think is key for this transition that we're seeing customers looking at to go from data center type virtualization models to the more elastic workloads. So key to this is something called external providers. We added these in Rev 3.3 at the start of this year. So these are external services that you can integrate with Rev. So the first one we have there is for host deployment. How do I deploy my hypervisor? So if you have a Foreman or later a Satellite 6 server, Rev can connect to that server and use it to deploy the hypervisor images. So we want to standardize where we can, again, on the same set of tools to deploy infrastructure. So the investment in Foreman and into satellite will pay off in the Rev deployments. In terms of images, so every virtualization platform has to handle images, my templates or my VMs. So OpenStack has a service called Glance, and it's a registry that contains images. Imagine it's a VM image or a template. I can now connect Rev to OpenStack's image service. I can look at the images there, and I can import the VMs or the templates from an OpenStack image store into Rev. So imagine standardizing on just one image store based on the OpenStack services and deploy those images on multiple platforms. And then SDN, it's another great buzzword today with your software-defined network infrastructure. So Neutron is that service within OpenStack. So if you're using OpenStack with the Neutron plugin for advanced networking, then we can share that same infrastructure between the Rev system and the OpenStack platform. So 3.3 is out today. 3.4 is in beta. It's going to be GAing in May, and you can come and look at that in our booth downstairs during the expo hours. So new features coming in 3.4. From a storage point of view, our storage pools, that's where we keep your VMs, your images, and your templates, used to be restricted to one storage type. You picked Fiber or iSCSI or NFS or Gluster or local disk. Now you can mix and match them. If you want to have a storage pool that's iSCSI and NFS or Fiber and NFS, you can group those together. Snapshot improvements, we used to allow just snapshotting a VM and saying disks and memory. You could pick which one or both. You can now pick which disks you're going to snapshot. If you have an OS image and a data disk, you don't have to snapshot both together. Read-only disk is straightforward. Online resizing an iSCSI storage domain. You have an iSCSI LAN that you extend. We can online resize our storage domain while the VMs are still running. We can already do that with Fiber and NFS. And enhancements to Glance to allow us for a Glance support from OpenStack to import both templates as well as pure disk images from OpenStack. From a networking point of view, security groups, so firewall rules that you define. So here's a security group that says the web server can be accessed by the public network on port 443 and private on port 22 to SSH. So you define your security groups in Neutron, apply those to your Rev VMs in addition to OpenStack. IPAM, IP address management, managing a set of IP resources, the pool of IPs across your data center and your cloud networks. Compute, so we have a scheduler that decides where VMs run and when they're migrated for load balancing. We've extended that to add support for affinity and anti-affinity groups. Always run these VMs together or never run them together. That could be a soft recommendation or a hard policy. Extending load balancing, so live migrating based on memory utilization as well as CPU. Reserving capacity for highly available VMs, so if a VM is going to go down, we want to make sure we have capacity available on other hosts in the cluster. Hot plugging CPUs, template versioning, etc. So given running out of time, let me skip to one point on infrastructure, so SNMP notifications, so customize the notifications we give to third-party monitoring systems. And finally on to 3.5. So 3.5 is scheduled for the end of this year. So it will support RHEL 7 as a hypervisor, side by side with RHEL 6, including migration from 6 to 7 without downtime. Live cloning of VMs, merging of snapshots. If you take a snapshot, you no longer need it, you can merge it into the base image without any downtime. And extended quality of service with block I/O limiting, so setting policies for I/O as well as CPU capping. With that, let me hand over before the last beep comes over there. So again, 1:20 today for a hands-on lab, 3:40 tomorrow for a roadmap, and following that, we have a session with a deep dive into technology. Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Okay, time for some OpenStack. I guess Tim already covered this a little bit, but in terms of how we see our value, the value that we add on around OpenStack, I just wanted to give my own personal take on that. I think OpenStack is exactly the kind of fast-moving, diverse project that we love to see. It's this kind of collaboration and diversity in the open source world that we really see kind of brings a lot of exciting innovation around. And what we're trying to do here is kind of make sense of this chaos this healthy chaos, make sense of that for our customers. We see RHEL as the best platform for running OpenStack on, and then we're trying to provide RHEL-OSP as a stable base for building your clouds and running the workloads you want to run on your cloud. So what we've done, spent a lot of time doing over the last couple of years is, building the kind of upstream influence and insight you kind of expect Red Hat to have around the projects that we build our products around, and we build this kind of upstream influence and insight so that we can, drive that project for the way our customers kind of expect. So, like we've done from around Linux as well, we've built this broad ecosystem of certification and partnerships around our product too. So in terms of releases of the product, the latest release is RHEL-OSP 4. It's based on the OpenStack Havana release. And we released this in December, 2 months after the Upstream Havana release. RHEL-OSP 4 was the first time Heat, which is an orchestration API, and Ceilometer, which is a metering and monitoring API. 4.0 was the first time these two projects were fully supported. In 4.0, we also added support for using Foreman, which is a systems management tool, which is included in Satellite 6. So we're now using Foreman as the kind of default systems management tool for deploying and managing OpenStack. So 4.0 is based on RHEL 6.5, and we've got an 18-month support lifecycle around it. RHEL-OSP 5, which is due out in June or July this summer, will be based on the Icehouse release. Again, it'll be out a couple of months after the Upstream release. In 5.0, we'll be supporting both the Trove, which is a database as a service project, and Sahara, which is a Hadoop as a service project. We'll be supporting both of those as technology preview. And 5.0 will be based on both RHEL 7 and RHEL 6.5. And we'll have a 3-year support lifecycle around it. So some of the kind of interesting features going on around RHEL-OSP includes in 4.0, in the Z-Stream release of 4.0, we now have, for the first time, a really comprehensive HA architecture around OpenStack, which is really crucially important for a project which has such a complicated architecture and kind of so much kind of high availability requirements. We've also improved the upgrade process from RHEL-OSP from 3 to 4. As I mentioned, we've included support for Foreman, but we've also very recently done a lot of work in the Z-Stream of RHEL-OSP to really customize Foreman and the user experience around Foreman, specifically to make it easier to manage OpenStack. So what you're seeing here is some screenshots of kind of a Foreman UI plugin specific to OpenStack to make it really easy to deploy OpenStack. In RHEL-OSP 4 as well, we also now support the vCenter compute driver, so you can now use OpenStack to manage workloads running on vCenter. So some future work that we're doing. I mentioned upgrades already. In between 4 and 5, the upgrade process is going to get even smoother. We're also really happy to say that we're going to be supporting RabbitMQ as a messaging system for in RHEL-OSP 5, as well as the default Cupid messaging system, which we currently support. We'll also support an active database for running OpenStack on top of using MariaDB and Galera, and this will be fully kind of included and supported in the product. We're doing a lot of work around scalability and reliability, and to jump ahead to OO, it's particularly kind of close to my heart. This is a kind of a really future-looking project we're doing upstream on OpenStack, collaborating with the community there to really drive some standardization around how OpenStack is managed and deployed. And the kind of insight we kind of see that OO is building on is, OpenStack is like a scale-out, fault-tolerant application, which, is really the kind of applications that you are used to running on OpenStack. And now that OpenStack can actually deploy and manage bare metal servers as well as virtual servers, we're actually now working on using OpenStack to deploy and manage OpenStack itself. But again, the exciting thing here is about driving some standardization work in the Upstream project around how OpenStack is managed and deployed. So this is coming in in future releases. We're also doing a whole lot of support around SDN and NFV, with a view to basically the telco industry standardizing around using OpenStack to manage their virtualized data centers. I guess this whole session is about portfolio integration. So, OpenStack touches everything, right? OpenShift running on top of OpenStack, using CloudForms to manage OpenStack, integration with storage and identity management. It's all there. And sessions related to OpenStack at the summit, I guess pretty much all sessions will touch on OpenStack, but some of the specific ones includes one on Red Hat Storage Server and the work that team is doing, making it easier to run OpenStack, or better integrating Red Hat storage basically with OpenStack. Some best practices in another session today, Red Hat Cloud Infrastructure, and a really interesting one tomorrow about how to do capacity planning around OpenStack, which is really important if you're going to be running elastic cloud infrastructure. So I think I'm a little bit early. Must meet my fast Irish talking, and I'll move it on.
Thank you. All right, I have a minute more, great. So I'll give a quick update on our plans. I probably should have figured out to use this first. Okay, so a quick update on what we're doing around containers and Docker. You probably saw in the keynote that it's a big deal for us. To put that into context, we are seeing a change in paradigm that's happening, and it's really a continuity of how deployment of IT evolved. The traditional enterprise operating system, where we started with RHEL and Unix before that, was built around a monolithic runtime. We would have one instance of the operating system defining the runtime for applications, and each application shared the same runtime, which a very stable model, but it leads to a lack of flexibility, I'd say. There also was a trend to do single instance isolation, partly because Windows never really did multi-instance, or people didn't trust it. So you would basically have one instance of the operating system per application, and at the end that meant one piece of hardware per application. And we saw that in Linux as well. And that really led to the uptake in virtualization, because virtualization, despite the performance overhead and the cost overhead for the virtualization and management layers, allowed you to share hardware between multiple applications in this model and optimize your application runtime, the user space runtime, the kernel, the operating system for your application while running on the same hardware. Downside, complex management, right? You don't have introspection. The delegation that was enabled to that allowed you to separate duties between IT and the application owner, but at the end, you hand over a whole virtual machine with all the security and management implications to the application owner. So that's very heavy. And that's where we think that application-centric IT and PaaS really come in, and where containers change things. Because here we package applications with their runtime, but without their own operating system. Shared services still are part of the overall operating system, provided outside of the individual application. And you have the operating system now as a multi-instance, multi-version, multi-tenant environment with delegation on the container level, still the ability to do introspection and central management. So we see this as best of both worlds. So the big topic and what enables that is Docker. That's a buzzword right now. So what is Docker? And from our point of view, the key about Docker is really the aggregate packaging and the distribution API with layering that it provides. Docker takes a Linux container content and puts it into an image format, actually an aggregate packaging format, so it's not a block level image, and lets you distribute that. It also allows you to layer additional images on top of that image. So it's a single inheritance model to specialize or extend an image, which is a very powerful model, right? If you look at the trend of appification, that it really didn't get into the enterprise because each image, it was hard to customize. You couldn't get an image from an ISV and then customize it properly. And it's a big problem with software appliances. They're too inflexible. Docker solves this problem. You can take an image from Red Hat, or you can take an image from a Red Hat ISV that's built on top as a layer on top of a Red Hat image, and then you can customize it with whatever is your local view on that content, and then you can deploy it into containers on a host. Linux containers are very different from virtualization, although you can use it in similar ways. But at the end, the point about containers is it's much more fine-grained control. You don't have the hard separation between host and guest. I look at it as horizontal partitioning of the host rather than vertical abstraction of hardware. And that gives you the ability to, for example, while the host can always introspect into a container, right? In a virtual machine environment, you don't have that because of the hard boundary. But you can also, for example, have privileged containers that can manage the host. So you get to a whole new model to expand your environment, your systems, where you can have a host that's a very optimized atomic environment, and you can layer management extensions and application containers on top of it. And that is really what the atomic project that we announced today, and you probably saw in the keynote, is about. It's a view on Linux that is optimized for the container environment. And so RHEL is going to be one implementation of it. We will have Fedora and CentOS atomic variants as well. So it's applied. It's a concept applied to the whole Red Hat family of Linux products and projects. And it's really a minimal operating system, hardened and optimized for container environments. It provides an atomic patching model. So it's not you don't update that via YAM. You use OS3. So the whole image at once with the ability to go back to older versions, rollback and things like that. It defines standardized core services, orchestration primitives. It's integrated with OpenShift, and it will provide the ability to extend. To put that into bigger context, and Brian already mentioned that, so we are working on a model where we integrate this paradigm, containers, atomic host, with our management stack, with the upstream Docker work. So we're not going to fork from the upstream community here. We are one of the contributors upstream now. And we're going to enable management of content, of Docker images, and deployment, and then actually building of images in satellite. And you'll see an adoption of these paradigms across the Red Hat product portfolio. So the current roadmap really has, a beta based on RHEL 7 is going to happen, and I'm out of time. And then extended adoption throughout the year. We have more sessions. There's an OpenShift session that's going to talk about the OpenShift side of this at 1:20. And the last session in this room tonight is a deep dive on our Docker plans. And I'll have 50 minutes then, so that's going to be more detail.
Thanks, Daniel. All right, so I'm going to talk about Red Hat CloudForms. For those of you who don't know, Red Hat CloudForms is the Red Hat Cloud Management Platforms. And really, at a high level, really what it provides is a single pane of glass to manage a set of hybrid heterogeneous cloud. And by hybrid, I mean both public and private cloud, as well as clouds from, supporting different technologies. So if you look at the bottom of the slide, what you're going to see is that today, CloudForms support Red Hat OpenStack, Enterprise Rev, VMware, as well as Amazon Web Services. And as I'll go through my roadmap, I'll point out like new clouds that are going to be supported by CloudForms. On the higher side of the slide, you can see the set of functionality that, that is being delivered to the end user. So if I take a set of use cases, persona, if I am an end user, I can start getting self-service delegation, where I can start seeing quota management across all the various workloads that are running into those environments, starts to request new workloads to be seamlessly provisioned in those clouds, both public and private, but not only manage them, but not only provision them, but being able to manage their entire life cycle, all the way from the request to the retirement of the workloads, being able to delegate to the end user capabilities such as start and stop, being able to manage their, the various things. Also, CloudForms provide this ongoing discovery of the environment. So it captures all the relationships amongst the various constituents of those clouds, whether it's infrastructure-based type cloud with a relationship to the infrastructure, to the VMs, to the management system, as well as in the cloud themselves, being able to identify which instance is in which availability zone and so on, and capture this information real time. So that as an administrator, if I'm a cloud operator, I can get a set of informations about those clouds. Right-sizing information, are all those workloads running in those clouds right-sized, right? And CloudForms will provide you with a set of information on how to re-right-size them. Are they running into the right cloud based on my business policies? Do they need to be migrated from one cloud to the other based on the set of requirements that I have specifically to that particular workload? On top of this, we can offer a set of executive dashboards. So CloudForms allows to have a very high-level view, if you want, of the environments that are being managed, so that you can understand as an executive where each workload, where you're spending your money, and provide all kinds of information at a higher level. So those are all the capabilities at a high level from the product. So in terms of our roadmap, just so everybody realize, CloudForms came to Red Hat from the ManageIQ acquisitions. So that technology was, that acquisition happened in December 2012. As we went through the acquisition, we put our first release, which was really a rebranding release of the technology acquired. Then we moved onto the Red Hat strategy to integrate CloudForms within the portfolio. Our very first set of deliverables has been focused, so the previous release was released in November of this year, and a lot of focus was about integrating with OpenStack, providing OpenStack support as a cloud provider to CloudForms. So we have been able to provide inventory, eventing, all those set of capabilities, so that now OpenStack is seamlessly available, self-service. We have self-service capabilities where end user can request new workloads into OpenStack, can have a single pane of glass to manage multiple instances of OpenStack running into your environment if you've got various OpenStack cloud and so on. We've also extended our set of capabilities for Rev itself, where CloudForms has this ability to do very deep introspections of VMs running or instances running into the environment, down very, very granular, down to the package level, the type of information. And all this information is being captured and retained so that you can set a set of policy that will allow you to control in a much more tighter way the integration. So we've extended those capabilities. Moving forward in the futures, a big task, CloudForms was initially coming from this ManageIQ acquisition, which was a private company. We've been working a lot on open sourcing the technology. So in the short term, medium term, we have a roadmap to open source the technology. We are targeting not only the engineering community, but we are also going to be trying to federate together our user community, partners, ISV partners, to be able to provide extension to CloudForms and start expanding the scope of what can be managed through this single pane of glass. On top of this, so CloudForms 3.1 is currently in release, and we're planning to release this summer. we're going to add, on top of the open sourcing, we're going to add enhanced support around OpenStack, where we have a set of the basic capabilities that applies to other clouds, where we're going to extend those, such as integrating with tenant support within OpenStack. We're going to provide initial support for Neutron, where you'll be able to start managing and and integrating the networking layer. But also, with the 3.0 release, our initial focus was really around the Red Hat OpenStack release. Going open source, we're also making sure that we can manage as many OpenStack distribution as possible, which means being able to integrate with different event messaging system. With the community also, we've got a big focus going on around the content management. Within CloudForms, you can import and export orchestration workflows. You can create your own set of reports. You can create policies, compliance policies, and so forth. So what we're doing, we're making it much more easy to be able to exchange, for you users, to exchange the contents that you may be creating to create workflows when you integrate with third-party systems. So CloudForms allow us to quickly integrate with your enterprise infrastructure. And so we have plugins for things like Red Hat, for Microsoft SCOM and so forth. So all these you'll be able to exchange them. In terms of the integration that we have with the portfolio, as part of this 3.0 release, we also have enhanced integration with our identity management. And I know Dimitri is next here, so he'll talk more about this. But we are extending and really integrating CloudForms and IDM together so that it's very, very secure. Talk about satellite integration, where we are also being able to provide, start integrating with the bare metal management around satellite. In terms of the sessions, we have a lot of sessions going on. There's one in parallel right now. There is a couple labs. I mean, if anything, look at this, but there's also a couple labs if you want to get hands-on. There is a lab this afternoon at 1:20, I think, and a lab on Thursday morning. So feel free to go to those labs. Now I'm going to turn over to Dimitri.
Hello. Last but not least, identity management. So we have been working for a couple years on solving the problem of interoperability between identity management components that we have in Red Hat Enterprise Linux and Active Directory. And these components are identity management. It's the component of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. It's first debuted in Red Hat Enterprise Linux 6.2. And there is a client-side component called SSSD, System Security Services Daemon. So we have been innovating with both of those components. And both of those components provide you an integration capability with the Active Directory. And there are two paths to Active Directory. One is direct integration. If you want your Linux systems to be joined into Active Directory, then the functionality of the SSSD is what you are looking for. If you are interested in growing your Linux infrastructure over time and provide not only authentication and identity lookups, but also the policies and management around the Linux systems, then you should consider the identity management component to manage the Linux infrastructure. And it on server-to-server level can provide interoperability with Active Directory. There will be a session about that at 3:30 in room 307. So please come. It will show the direct and indirect integration with Active Directory for Linux and other use cases around that. So as I mentioned, we are innovating both for SSSD and identity management. So there have been a lot of improvements. If you are familiar with earlier versions of them that are in the current shipping version of Red Hat Enterprise Linux 6, then we can talk about different improvements. We have a booth, pod number 4, and you can come. We have some demos, and we can follow up there on the details. What we're working on moving forward beyond Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 is native two-factor authentication with Kerberos. That's the first implementation of the native two-factor authentication with Kerberos. So I'm very excited to bring that to the market down the road. We enhanced the certificate management capability of the identity management so that you can chain to the existing CAs and change the long-term keys for the CA. We're bringing new look and feel. We adding new access control capabilities to the LDAP data so that you can control read-only also in addition to read-write and modify capabilities. More AD integration improvements are down the road. And we are looking into the DNSSEC and not only making DNSSEC available for everybody, but making it easy available, because DNSSEC is hard to manage, especially in terms of rotating the keys. So we want to make it possible to deploy DNSSEC for the zones that you want to have DNSSEC and have the key rotation automatically done for you. And one of the hot topics for identity management is backup and restore. We have been working on that for quite some time, and we are bringing that in the later versions. On the client side, on the system security services daemon, it being a path to direct Active Directory integration, we want to surpass Samba WinBind capabilities. We are still lacking a couple small things. So we are working on closing this gap, and we chose SSSD as our primary component for Active Directory integration because of agility, of its development, its flexibility, its capability to work in the heterogeneous environments and not being only oriented on the Active Directory integration. It works for Linux, it works for IDM, it works for Active Directory, and you can do a lot of things with it. So that's our path forward, and integration with Docker and containers, providing SSSD identity services into the applications running in containers through the service containers. That's SSSD is going there. Also, we want to be able not only provide the basic POSIX capabilities, but allow applications to consume more rich identities through the extended interfaces. So very soon, with the applications running on the platform, whether they are just platform-level applications or web applications, you will be able to consume rich identities coming from the central identity solution through SSSD. So SSSD will collect and cache this information so that application doesn't need to think about the security of the connection, the failover, the load balancing, the trust. All this complexity is outside of the application, and this stack is provided for any application on the platform. So portfolio integration, you have seen the theme across the whole presentation. And we are working with all the products and projects in our portfolio. We want to provide same look and feel in terms of authentication and single sign-on, the same user experience. We want to provide turnkey security setup for all the items in our portfolio so that when you deploy any product and you want it to be installed with all the SSL, all the keys, provisioned from moment one, you have it. That's our focus for this year. And finally, the session at 3:30 and 3:07, booth port number 4, and there is a lab on Thursday at 11:30. Thank you very much.
All right, so as a wrap up, let's see. So I think what you've seen here is cloud means a lot of different things, right? There's not one component of cloud. It's a lot of the technologies put together. And I think this is really what I find the most exciting thing about being at Red Hat right now. If you look at all the pieces are converging because it's all driven by open source. So it still remains RHEL as the underlying platform, both for physical, bare metal and virtualization, as well as to form the platform as a service layers, things like OpenStack, OpenShift, Docker. And it permeates through the cloud management layer through ManageIQ CloudForms. And it also includes how content is derived and delivered through satellite that feeds into RHEL bare metal. It feeds into Rev for data center virtualization, feeds into OpenStack, and also feeds into CloudForms. So I think that what you're really going to see is Red Hat has the real broad portfolio of pieces that are needed to make a real compelling cloud suite that brings it, not from the, that no longer requires the rocket scientist to run something, but it really is consumable by you, our customers. And that's really what Red Hat really is all about. We've talked about the innovation. We've talked about how we've made security enhancements, how we've done performance and scalability enhancements, and how we're weaving all the pieces together for enterprise product support. And so that's what it's really all about. Last slide. We didn't have time in this session for questions because this was really just kind of a greatest hits, but I think we've given you a lot of references to other sessions. I'm glad you guys came. This is really special that you guys were here for our very first cloud roadmap. And the one and only thing I ask from you guys in return is to please rate the session. So we actually finished like a minute or two early, and we're going into lunch anyways. So we should, if the fire code wouldn't prohibit it, I'd lock the door right now and not let you out if you didn't rate the session. But that's really be hugely valuable to us. How did you find this? Because it'll feed into how we do it next year. And if you think that, please, I'll read every one of the comments. So if you have any suggestions in the format, we're all ears. So with that, I hope you've got some good pointers on like other exciting sessions to go to and demos to see in the show floor and some labs. And thanks for being part of it, because it's not just about Red Hat. It's how we build it together with you, our partners, and our customers. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the summit.